Deep right field. Down the line it goes. Castellanos is out of room. It's out of runner goes. 3-2 pitch hit down the line. Is it fair? It is a fair ball. Into the corner. Off and running. Chu. Yu Chang around third. He's going to score easily. And into second. Hit hard. Hit deep. Up and out. Goes Amed Rosario. And there's a fly ball. Left field. It's deep. It's up. It's gone to the porch. Deep left center field, it is gone to Souvenir City.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. I am your host, Melanie Kirby, and here with me, as always, is my co-host, James Ellifritz, who actually is fresh off a short little IL stint. James, how we feeling tonight on this first official day of fall with the smell of champagne in the air?
Yeah, it's not about pumpkin spice. It's not about the cool weather. It's about the AL Central.
All about it. Champagne, Bud Light's about to be flying through that locker room. I have this feeling. But what a great day to be a Cleveland Guardians fan. I just saw the Twins lost again today. I think they had a 1-7 road trip on their most crucial road trip of the year. The Guardians absolutely demoralized them. And they are, in the process of doing the same exact thing to the Chicago White Sox. It's feeling like fall outside for the first time. The Browns are playing tonight, but it's looking like we're going to have postseason baseball here in Cleveland for the first time since 2020 after a short little hiatus last year. But with Tuesday's extra inning victory, which never should have been an extra inning victory, but more on that later. The Guardians were able to secure the tiebreaker over Chicago. And another win last night pretty much seals the deal with about a week and a half left. Their magic number right now sits at 7. The Sox are 6 games back. Might as well make it 7 with that tiebreaker. It's 13 games remaining. So if my math's correct, James, I think even if we go like 6-7, worst case scenario, the White Sox have to go like 12-1. To take this division from us. How you feeling after these last couple series?
Yeah, it's great with the momentum. I mean, it's the when I checked yesterday, I believe it was between us and the Astros, both 9-1 in the last 10 games, and I want to keep that momentum up. So as much as we want to clinch early, we also want to keep the momentum, but get our pitching staff set up. Get some of the guys like Will Brennan that just came up, make sure we get him some playing time.
Yeah.
Just another rookie that made his major debut. It's unbelievable.
And it's funny you mentioned the Astros. I was watching MLB Central this morning on the network, and Bo Porter, they had a discussion on who's the biggest threat to the Houston Astros in the American League. I think, far and away, I think you'd have to say they're the best all-around team right now. Bo Porter actually said the Guardians were the biggest threat. He's like, I'm riding with the Guardians all the way. They're a team that nobody wants to face in October, not just because of their pitching. I mean, obviously the pitching's going to be what carries us, but a team like the Astros, if you look at their pitching staff, they're guys who heavily rely on the strikeout, guys like Verlander, and McCullers and, all those guys, Valdez, like they're heavy strikeout guys. And we have a lineup that just does not strike out.
Yep.
There is not going to be a time in October. I don't care how young they are. I don't see this team beating themselves with Tito as their manager. I think a team is going to have to outright beat them. And I think that is, I have to agree with him, all bias aside. Like, I like our chances in the wild card round. Seattle scares me a little bit, but they're, I want them to start winning. They're kind of imploding right now, but when I look at it, their schedule's a lot easier than Tampa Bay's is the rest of the way. But I mean, Tampa Bay, I like our chances. And then we get the Yankees. And, the Yankees are a team that has a lot of flaws. Obviously, Aaron Judge is having a historic season, but I love that we don't have to see the Astros until the ALCS if we're lucky enough to get there.
Yeah, that's what's great about our roster is that between the high contact rate, getting on base, and then our speed, the pressure that we put on the opposing defenses is what's the most challenging for our opponents. Because even if we're just, Kwan gets a base hit, because he's just ready to take off at the next contact, and we drive the ball in the outfield to gap. He's, when we talked about first to third,
Yeah.
or
One
ball
of
in
the
the gap,
best.
and we score. First to home. So that's what I love about our team, is that we're so different than 95. I've saw some comparisons from statistics, but it's a way different feel of how we manufacture runs all the way through the order. There was no Miles Straw at the bottom of the order in 95. And even though Miles is starting to hit, for him, he's kind of on a hot streak, right? He's
Absolutely.
starting to make up for some of those really, really bad at bats. But he has been helping us out in this last week.
Yeah, and you mentioned momentum, how important heading into the playoffs with a little momentum is. And as we stand right now, September 22nd, this is our largest division lead since 2018. So that shows you this team got hot at the right times. I think I saw last night they're 23-13 against Chicago and Minnesota this year, which you just love to see. Those are the two teams that are on your tail that you've been chasing all year, and they're taking care of business. Tonight we got Bieber versus Cueto in the series finale. Guards are going for the sweep before they head on down to the Lone Star State and face the Rangers. The earliest they could clinch is Sunday in Texas, like I said. But it probably happens sometime next week. The homestand with Tampa Bay. They end the season at home with, the 3 against Tampa Bay and 6 against the Royals. So, make sure you go on down to the ballpark, buy up some tickets if you're financially able to, and be a part of the festivities. I mean, everything about this team, they're just a bunch of kids having the time of their life. And I think that's what makes them so fun to watch. And for us here in Cleveland and just fans of the Guardians, all over, is they're easy guys to root for. They all have such cool stories. Some of them were slept on, and they're just up here making a difference and making an impact, and has this team, basically essentially 7 games up in the division on September 1st or 22nd. It's insane.
And I know you mentioned about getting out to the ballpark, and it's so true. We've talked about on a few podcasts that I've been fortunate to team with you. For myself personally, when you've been to so many different playoff games, whether it be the Browns playoff games of the past that I went to, the LeBron years, and being there for Game 6 of the 2016 NBA Finals, and being at Tribe post games, it's hard to want to just attend any particular baseball game at a Guardians game. So for me, with them having a potential division clinching game coming up at home, that really draws interest to somebody like myself.
Yeah.
Really want to be a part of that, feel the energy, watch the flag go up the flagpole, and just watch these kids celebrate for something that I don't think any of us really did honestly expect to have happen this year. Now,
Yeah, I thought I had an optimistic prediction and on the podcast before the season started, after we had Andre Knott on. I predicted 85 wins, and I was called crazy. Like, everyone all over Twitter is like, that's insane. They're going to win 75 games. They're rebuilding, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you guys are sleeping on Quan, and Jimenez is going to bounce back. I saw some of what was coming, but they might win 90 games. And that's crazy to me. I didn't even think that. And it's just a blast. Before we get into kind of this outstanding last stretch of games, where they've went 6-2 since our last podcast recording when we were previewing this week ahead. The team made a couple surprising roster moves. You mentioned Will Brennan getting called up. First, Richie Palacios was sent down. Gabriel Arias was recalled. Palacios didn't get much run up here. He was kind of our late inning, pinch hitter, pinch runner guy.
yeah.
And they DFA'd Ernie Clement. And like you mentioned, Will Brennan finally was called up to make his MLB debut. The timing was a little odd just because Benson's up here not playing at all. And Miles Straw actually started to hit in the month of September. But a little background on some of you who may not be aware of who Will Brennan is through his time in the minors. He's our number 20 overall prospect. He's 24 years old, and he was Cleveland's 8th round pick in 2019 out of Kansas State. He's tearing up AAA all season. I think he went on like a 3-week cold streak in August. But other than that, he's just been lighting AAA up all year. He's batting .314. He had 13 homers down there, 107 RBIs. He tacked on 20 stolen bases, and he had an .850 OPS, which was among tops in all of AAA across both leagues. So there's no questioning he was ready. They have to make a decision on him this offseason anyways, so they figured why not add him to the 40 now, see what he's got. I like it. I've been reading there is a scenario where he could be eligible for the postseason because we have Anthony Gose on the 60-day IL, so they could make a petition to the commissioner's office to have Brennan replace Gose. Because otherwise I think you had to be on a roster by September 1st to be playoff eligible. So that would be huge if they could get him some run here. His family is adorable. Like my fiance was watching the game with me last night and had tears in her eyes watching his mom's reaction to his first hit. Like we've seen that 16 times this year. Like we've had 16 guys make their debuts, and most of those 16 have made an impact in one way or another.
And those family reactions never get old.
They're awesome. Just
it's
all
so
the
much
work,
fun to
like,
watch.
And I think of being outside with our 8-year-old and watching him hit off the tee and run around the fake bases we have at the park. And you think, and they're like, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player, and for some of these guys, they really do end up being a Major League Baseball player. And it's so cool to see.
Yeah. You know what else? Did you hear the story for Will that he got the call at like 1:00 in the morning? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
He got the call at 1:00 in the morning, and the coach asked him, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm not out. Yeah, I'm not out. So he goes, "I got the coach. We got a game tomorrow." And it's like, well, that's a good thing that you're not out because you're going to go play with the big league guys in Chicago. So I love those stories.
Love those.
I could all day long. And that's across baseball. It's not
the
just
Orioles do a great job with theirs.
Yeah.
When Gunnar got the call and Adley got the call up, they do some awesome hype videos for their guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to see these guys get their shot. A couple notes on the pitching. As we know, Aaron Savali came off the IL on Tuesday after only one rehab start in Columbus. And honestly, he looked fantastic. He went 5. Asking him to come out for that 6 was probably stretching it a little bit. But 2 of his inherited runners scored, and he allowed 4 hits. The White Sox didn't even have a guy reach second until the 5th. He had his elite command, which makes him, essentially unhittable. His curveball was dynamic, and he was efficient from the start. He had it all going for him. And I thought that was super promising to see from Aaron Savali heading into the postseason. Obviously, we know, God willing, we make it in. We know we have Bieber, McKenzie, and Cal, but if we need that 4th guy or that first guy out of the pen, it's looking real good that Aaron Savali looks like the Savali from last year before he got hurt.
Yeah, Mr. Solid 5 innings. When he starts getting into that 6th, that's always nail biting time for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like he can get through that 6th inning, or even extend it that much farther. In many of his starts, I have not looked at his stats. I just know from what I've watched from his games, and I wish he could do that a little bit more. But I really think he is what he is, and he's never going to be a 7, 8, 8th inning guy to get that far. But for being like a number 4 or 5 starter, definitely we're lucky to have him.
Yeah, and I think he fits well. We don't know what's going to happen with Bieber over the next year or so, if they're going to get an extension worked with him or if they're going to end up trading him eventually. But, when you have guys like Daniel Espino and Gavin Williams coming up here shortly, you got to fill out the back end of that rotation too. We obviously got Tristan, who's I think going to be here for a while. He loves Cleveland. He loves everything about this organization. So you got 3 there. You still need a 4 and a 5. And I think Savali kind of slides him perfect into one of those spots because he can be really sneaky good. People sleep on him. They forget he was definitely going to be an all-star before his finger injury in Chicago last June. And he was even in the early Cy Young talks. That's how dominant he looked. But with him, durability has always been the issue. And I think if he didn't have those injury concerns, I think he'd be kind of a sneaky extension candidate just because when he is healthy, you know what you're going to get. And normally 9 out of 10 times it's going to be pretty solid, especially if you're talking, about a back end rotation type of guy. But I kind of want to see him healthy for a full season first.
I always like to compare the back end of the rotation guys to Josh Tomlin.
Yeah.
Josh Tomlin, you'd get really good Josh Tomlin, and then you would get, yikes, what just happened in the first inning?
He'd give up that long ball, man. But if you keep him to solo shots, they don't have to kill you.
Yeah.
Plesac, Andre Knott was reporting over the weekend as his bullpens have been looking really good. He could pitch in a simulated game and possibly be back before the end of the season. What are your thoughts on that? Are you out on Plesac, in on him?
As a manager, recognizing his injuries that are behavior related, I think where he can grow the most is in the off season.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's meeting with somebody, like I said, sports psychologist, whatever, but like I said, man, I was guilty in my playing days of getting pissed off, but it's time to get that together because, he can keep that ERA down. He can be out there pitching, putting zeros on the scoreboard. But the problem is too that where's the run support, so there's a little bit of both of, hey, I'm pitching my ass off, but where's the run support? But then you can't break down mentally the way he has, and it's cost him some lengthy stints the last couple of years.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when I heard Will Brennan was getting the call yesterday, I kind of wondered for a minute if they were just going to move Plesac to the 60-day, be done with him, and try to move on from him. I know for a fact they tried really hard to move him at the trade deadline. They came close, and for reasons unknown, it kind of fell apart at the last minute. But I think it's no secret. I think when something happens one time, it's like, okay, maybe that was just kind of a freak accident. But then it happens twice. And I don't see many pitchers in baseball break their pitching hand twice in as many seasons. And to me, that's the most concerning, because even if you go back to 2020, you had the whole COVID protocols incident with Clevenger right after Cookie finished his chemo. That wasn't a good look. Guys were not happy about that. The organization was not happy about that. And we saw Clevenger get dealt shortly after that. And I think when you combine that with Plesac being very average on the mound, even when he was having a lot of success early in the year, he was the luckiest pitcher in baseball. I mean, I'm talking loud outs to the warning track. The stats just aren't in his favor. And I think at some point, when does a headache become more than what you're providing on the field? I think he needs to learn to keep his emotions in check, and just kind of grow up, like you mentioned. And I think that can really only happen over the off season.
Yeah, you don't want to take away from his glove. He does field from the mound like no other.
Oh yeah, elite defender.
Fantastic. But you can't continue to hurt your team by not being able to be out there. Right. Exactly.
You make $2 million a year with that hand. Smack your glove on the ground or go kick a cooler.
Right.
But you got to stop using that pitching hand.
So what I see potentially in the playoffs is that, say there's a tie game, goes extra innings, him going in there, being able to pitch 3 or 4 innings if necessary, if something gets extended crazy, like Saturday night, where we had basically almost a triple header against the Twins.
Right.
I could see him. I don't know if Tito's going to throw him in a rotation for the playoffs, even if he's back. I can't see it.
And then just real quick, I want to make sure we had a listener question from Disgusting Baseball Lover, and it's a talking point I kind of wanted to get in anyway, so I'm glad they asked. And I want to make sure we get to it before we run out of time. But they said, what is your personal opinion on the Ahmed Rosario situation with Rocchio, Arias, Tena, etc., waiting in the wings? Then what do you think Antonetti and Chernoff will end up doing? It's one of the toughest. Yeah, it's one of the most polarizing situations.
because if somebody asked us a question about Jose at the beginning of the year or right in spring training, how would we have responded to that? Do you really think we would have got the extension that he did sign?
Yeah,
No, but I think
it was
with this,
scary.
as the majority ownership, when it changes, obviously our front office is leaving them with a lot on the plate. There's a lot of guys to where if somebody does get moved and they're not going to pay an extension, there's a lot of next man up, and a lot of our next man up is already up here. But we still have a deep minor league system.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoy watching Rosario play. I definitely like when you add to his singles total of 7,624,000, whatever singles. I mean, the guy's got more singles than Tinder, for crying out loud. So um, I would like to see him stay. Too much movement sometimes on that roster can be too much, but it seems like that if any roster has adapted to the change, because we've had such a turnover this year and with that youth movement, then ours can.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we got the right front office and the right managers and coaches in place that can handle it.
Rosario's tough. He's really tough to figure out. And I've always said, be careful with Rosario, because when he's hot like he is now, he can carry your lineup. But when he's cold, and it's usually month on, month off. If you look at his month by month splits, he's usually hot for 4 weeks, off, cold for 4 weeks. We know he doesn't do great in the cold. It kind of worries me about the postseason.
Yeah.
I know I'm looking ahead a little bit, but I love who he is as a player. And I love how hard he plays. And he's big in the clubhouse. We know he's Jose's best friend. We know Jose's lobbying for that extension to get done. But he's a starting shortstop right now, has been for 2 years in a league that has some really, really great shortstops. So the question with Rosario is going to be, would he be willing to take a team-friendly deal? And maybe at some point, hand the torch off to a guy like Brian Rocchio, who I do believe easily is our shortstop of the future. So again, I think I'm okay. I just wish he could be a super utility guy. I wish he could play other positions other than shortstop.
Well, and we saw what happened with that early in the year with
Right, the left field
so,
isn't happening.
no.
And they don't even play him at second, really. So we don't know if he can play third, second, or first. He's either a shortstop or a DH. So I think that makes the decision tougher. What do I think they will do? I think he's back. I don't know that they're going to want to put that pressure on Brian Rocchio right out of spring training, but I do think that we see Brian Rocchio by the All-Star break. That's my prediction on that. So I think we see Rosario to start the year. I just don't know if he'll finish the year. We'll have to wait and see on that. But getting into last week. So like I mentioned, Guardians went 6-2 in their last week of games. They took care of business. I know we were all crossing our fingers, hoping that 5-game Minnesota series went well. They took 4 out of 5. Obviously, they kind of punted that Thursday makeup game against Chicago, and I was one of the people like, why would you start Hunter Gaddis in such a big game? Tito's playing chess while we're all playing checkers. Yeah. He wasn't tempted by that instant gratification that we all wanted. Obviously, we all wanted the tiebreaker out of the way. We wanted that Thursday, so we didn't have to sweat it going into this week. Tito was playing the long game, and he saw the light at the end of the tunnel, that he wanted to get that rotation lined up the way that he wanted for Minnesota and Chicago. It's paying off in a ginormous way. We're not even going to talk about the makeup game. Gaddis gave up 5 homers. He's the first in franchise history to allow 5 homers in a single game. So we're going to glance on past that because it wasn't pretty. We were out of it from the very start. I wasn't really surprised. Yeah, just going to glance over that one. Then the Minnesota series came, and I think Friday was a big momentum setter. Obviously we took 4 out of 5 in this series. But Tristan wasn't his very best on Friday. He hung some sliders early, gave up that 2-run bomb to Jake Cave. And this was one of those games where the offense had to come back late, and Tristan hung in there, still gave you 7 innings, and he gave the offense a chance to battle back. But once again, they played fundamental baseball in the 7th inning. You know, like you mentioned earlier, they kept the defense on their toes and they made them make all the plays. And, you know, lucky for us, they couldn't make all those plays. Jimenez started that inning out, reaching on an error. Owen Miller singled. And at this point, Miles Straw had hits in 9 of his last 11 games. It's gotten even better since then. But he singled home Jimenez. And then Rosario had the big 2-run single. Just like we mentioned, you said more singles than Tinder. He added to his total right there. I said Titter. So tied the game at 3, and then that was the game. You know, we're gonna miss you. Ernie Clement raced all the way home from second on a wild pitch in the 8th to score the game-winning run. Gotta love it. Saturday was that doubleheader we talked about. No real doubt in game 1. We won that going away. Jose started off with a homer on his birthday. You know, Owen added a 2-run single. Ahmed, take a guess. What'd he have?
A single?
Another single, RBI single. Bieber did his thing, went 8 innings, saved the pen, struck out 6. They used Clase, which I was like, why are you bringing Clase in a 4-run game? But I understand. Tito watched the bullpen implode in Minnesota the week before. He wasn't playing around. He wanted game 1 of that doubleheader.
Yeah, it was just a solid start to the weekend on that.
Yeah, I think that was big. Kind of, you know, they knew they had to get game 1 of that doubleheader. You know, they weren't really sure how Pilkington was going to look. But he was actually phenomenal. By far the best we've seen Pilkington. He took a no-hitter into the 6th inning and struck out 6. What'd you think of Pilkington Saturday night?
Just
another guy who made his debut.
Like I said, I mean, if you were to drill the common fan that's not really paying attention to the team, you could just literally throw a name out there and just make it up and go, yeah, did you see that guy pitch last night? And then completely make the guy's name up and like, oh yeah, he was great, because there are so many people that are just coming up from the minors and helping us out that, like I said, I'm not as big as following the minor league teams as you are. But like, so some of these names as they're coming up, it's like, wow, what is he doing? I mean, I can't believe he's playing so well so quickly.
Yeah.
That's the key. So quickly. These kids look so comfortable out there, like they know exactly what they're supposed to do. Yeah, there's some little bit of jitters here and there, but if you just watch the body language and you look at their face, especially I noticed even McKenzie lately, he's starting to get a little swag going on too, coming off that mound, which I love that.
It.
Give me that shit all the time when he's especially, 13 Ks that I know we'll get to.
They're calling him the Slim Reaper.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. And, we jumped out to a 5-0 lead early in this one, which was good to see because you can't always come back late and expect to win. So it's good to see they're having these games where they're jumping out to big leads early. Ahmed had a 3-run homer. That single got over the wall, James. He had a 3-run homer. He's one of only 3 Cleveland players to have 2 4-hit games in a doubleheader. The first since 1993. Earl Averill, and then Nap LaJoy in 1910. But on the day, he was 8 for 13 with 6 RBIs. You really can't dominate a team more than Rosario did the Twins.
Yeah, we thought it was Jose's birthday. It was more like Ahmed's.
Yeah, and to think the game didn't even end on Jose's birthday. It started on his birthday, but game 2 did not end on his birthday.
I know. That was a long night.
Yeah. So we had a 5-0 lead. How'd we get to extra innings, you ask? Well, the bullpen had a rare implosion. Owen Miller had a crucial error to start the 8th. We know he can't really play defense. Karinchak gave up a 2-run homer to Nick Gordon, tied the game at 5. Sandlin didn't have his command. Stefan didn't have his command. It was just one of those games. It just wasn't going well for him. But it would stay that way till the 13th. The 2 teams traded some ugly runs, but both teams were just gassed, just struggled getting that ghost runner home. And then fittingly, Rosario wins the game, hits a grounder to the shortstop. Jermaine Palacios booted it, allowed Hedges to score the game-winning run. I mean, it was only fitting that game ended on an error.
Yeah, it's too bad the Browns didn't watch that game and show how to blow a lead, but yet hang on and still come away with the
Yeah,
victory.
they found a way. The other team could learn something from that.
That's the difference between a champion and just another team.
Yeah. So we saw we swapped the doubleheader. Great to see. Won the first 3 of the series. I knew Sunday and Monday would be a little tougher. Twins had Joe Ryan go on Sunday. It was our only loss of the series. I mean, Joe Ryan was fantastic, but Cody Morris honestly saved the pen himself, going 6 strong innings, only allowed the 1 home run, solo shot to Jake Cave. DLS De Los Santos, for who doesn't know, gave up 2 in the 9th, but he looked fantastic in extras. So I'm not too concerned about. It's hard to sweep a 5-game series, but they finished it off Monday, 11-4 win. I think this game is what sent the Twins packing for good. Naylor had that 3-run bomb in the first. Sonny Gray left the game after 2 with hamstring tightness. It was just not going the Twins' way. They could not get out of Cleveland fast enough. They just were smacking around Jorge Lopez, the Twins closer, deadline acquisition. You just love to see it. Blowout win to send the Twins packing.
Yeah, and Joe Ryan, he looks like Billy from
He does. You sent me that, and I could not believe how similar they looked.
he looks like Billy from Stranger Things. And
everybody go look at Billy from Stranger Things. You're gonna be amazed.
Yeah, check out Joe Ryan. And they definitely had to feel like they were in the upside down by the time they left Cleveland.
Yeah. So Rosario in the series went 11 for 25. That's good for a 440 average. 2 homers, 11 RBIs. Cal moves to 13-0, progressive field with a 2.95 ERA. So it was on to Chicago. They're feeling good and just needed 1 win to get that tiebreaker. As we mentioned, they got that Tuesday. They made Cease work, and I thought that was the game plan they needed against them. Lay off the high fastball, lay off that slider in the dirt. They did good for the most part. We already talked about Savali. He was fantastic. Probably shouldn't have came out for the 6th. But then the 7th came. Jimmy Lambert walked the first 2. Quan singled home Miller. Jose beats out a ground ball to score another. We tied at 3. And the next batter, Naylor hits that ball in the hole. Rosario did score from second. They somehow called him out. He was safe by a mile. I just think MLB needs to find a way to have scoring plays be reviewable. Challenge or no challenge.
That's fair. I really do.
Yeah, it should have never went 11 innings.
Technology's there. What, college football and usually
NFL review scoring plays.
They were every play.
Yeah. So that sucked. But what do our guys, and that's the thing with this team, they could have sulked and been like, woe is me. We should have won then. They just kept battling. The top of the 10th, they score a couple runs. Unfortunately, Class A couldn't hold it down in the bottom of the 10th. He's going to have that rare tough outing. And Jose Abreu, I'm not mad about that. Jose's team's holding on for dear life at this point. But then they come out in the 11th and they just smack them around. And they got the W. That's all that matters. Miles Straw had that ginormous 2-run double. And it got me looking at Miles Straw, and he's hitting like 338 in the month of September. His walk rate's up to 9.5%. And I think the biggest difference is he has a 40% pull rate this month. It was only 25% on the season. And I think him pulling the ball is his best chance to get those hits. It's massive for him. But his WRC plus is up to 142, which is 40 above league average.
And it seemed like when he was struggling there right before he started to warm up, that he was trying to pull the ball. Remember those balls that would be on it was so far in the other batter's box. Remember, it was like, why is he swinging? I mean, that looks like it's going to hit a left-handed batter.
Yeah.
It was so far out of there, but it looked like he was so dead set on no matter where that pitch is thrown, he's going to try to pull it. And it just made it look like a horrible at bat, horrible strikeout.
Yeah.
So looks like he's finally cleaned some of that up.
So he had that massive 2-run double. They brought Brian Shaw in the bottom of the 11th with a 5-run lead. He still shit his pants per usual. Gave up a 2-run bomb. But luckily they held on. They won it. Just to hand the ball off to Tristan. They enjoyed getting that tiebreaker. And Tristan was absolutely dealing last night. Went 8 innings, 2-run ball, and he had 13 strikeouts after striking out 14 White Sox just a couple weeks ago. And, something's telling me that he's going to absolutely shine in October. He's getting that swag you were talking about, the Slim Reaper.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed that recently, that swag coming off the mound after some of those strikeouts. You see him motioning with his glove towards the
I
fans
saw that
above the
last
dugout.
night.
I'm like, oh, I love this. And then, Naylor, what was that, the game before where he was standing up on the dugout
Oh yeah, he wants
talking
all this.
trash to the White Sox?
I mean, I think he was just asking Elvis Andrews what flavor of crumble cookies he likes, because they were going to have them sent on over to him, because I don't know that we're the team that's crumbling here. But what do I know? What do I know? Quan added a homer. Naylor had a 2-run bomb. The White Sox just looked demoralized. I honestly thought Lance Lynn and Yohan Moncada were going to fight each other on the field. Lance Lynn was so pissed at him for booting all those balls. At third, then, Moncada decides to bat flip on a solo home run in the fourth. That was super weird. But to each his own. We got Bieber. We got Johnny Cueto tonight. I would love to get a sweep of the White Sox before heading down to Texas. Hopefully they can kind of take a breath a little bit. They only face one lefty in that series. That's Sunday. But we miss Martin Perez, which is awesome. He's their best pitcher. And then they come home to end the year with 3 against Tampa. And important to note that Shane McClanahan left his start the other day with a neck injury. So we might miss Shane McClanahan in this final series, which that would be huge. Then we get the Royals for 6. The team's offering $11 tickets for that series, so come pack the park. Let's give these guys the home field advantage that they deserve. You got anything to add before we close here, James?
No, I just want to continue that momentum that we talked about earlier in the show. Finish the season strong. Look like we're going to have that rotation set for the playoffs, because as we were talking before, did we say playoffs? Yes, we did. There's going to be October baseball in Cleveland. And I know the Browns are back, and I know the Cavs are on fire locally too, but we need to support our baseball franchise. These young guys deserve it, and I cannot wait to see us some October baseball down at Progressive Field.
Couldn't agree with you more. Speaking of the Browns and Cavs, make sure you head over to believelandmediallc.com to check out all our podcasts and written content on all the major sports teams, the Buckeyes, high school sports, and wrestling. We all do great work over here at Believe Land. So make sure you come check us out. Thank you to all our sponsors for this episode. You've heard those ads throughout the episode. We just want to thank all you guys for all your love and support you've shown us. I can't believe this is episode 44 already, and James has been an outstanding addition. I just can't wait to talk postseason baseball on here. We've came a long way from, I had to fill the air during the lockout to, popping the champagne and having postseason baseball here in Cleveland. And, I'll tell you, having this series, this wild card round at home, best of 3 with Bieber and McKenzie, and only if needed, Cal Quantrill. All I got to say is enjoy it, folks. And enjoy these kids out here having the time of their life. And I hope we're talking to you next week after a nice little winning streak. So with that being said, everybody enjoy the game tonight and this weekend. Stay safe and stay healthy, and go Guardians.
Go Guardians, and thank you, everybody.